Have you ever heard of a man? A man who stood between the might of the Mongol Empire and the survival of Islam. Not with legions of scholars, not with golden palaces, but with faith, steel, and fire in his soul. This is the tale of Berke Khan, the first Muslim Mongol ruler, a storm from the steppes who rose when no one expected it. While Genghis Khan's sons and grandsons tore through empires like a flame devouring dry leaves, Berke watched the destruction, the blood, the arrogance. But deep inside, Allah planted something they could never conquer: guidance, Tawheed, a burning sense of justice. He embraced Islam not for politics, but because his heart recognized truth when it touched him. And when the Mongol hordes reached the gates of Baghdad, when cities burned and rivers turned black with ink and blood, it seemed as if nothing could stop them. But Allah never sleeps, and from within their own ranks, He raised one of them against them. This is the story of how Allah used one Mongol to break another. A story of betrayal, brotherhood, and divine justice. A story that would shake the very core of the empire Genghis Khan built. You think you know history. You've heard of Hulagu. You've heard of the fall of Baghdad. But you haven't heard what came after. You haven't heard how the Muslims struck back with the sword of a believer who happened to be born Mongol. This is the rise of Berke Khan, and this is how the Mongol Civil War began. Not over land, not over gold, but over La ilaha illallah. Long before Berke Khan would defy his own blood, he was born into a fractured family. One that shaped his destiny long before he ever drew a sword. His father was Yoki, Genghis Khan's eldest son, but from the moment of his birth, Yoki's legitimacy was questioned. Yoki was born shortly after his mother Berta was rescued from captivity. Rumors spread that he was not Genghis's true son, and though Genghis accepted him, many of his brothers never did. Among them, Chagatai, Genghis's second son, refused to see Jochi as equal. This rift would poison the bloodline of Genghis for generations. Berke grew up in the shadows of this legacy. Born into the Golden Horde, he was raised amidst vast steppes, brutal winters, and endless tribal feuds. But Berke was not just another warrior. He studied the old Mongol ways and listened to the whispers of the Silk Road. Traders from the Islamic world told stories that stayed with him. He learned about justice, about mercy, and about Allah. Where other Khans saw only conquest, Berke began to see purpose. Before Berke Khan challenged the foundations of the Mongol Empire, he served it with sword and fire. He was born into the Golden Horde, the western arm of Genghis Khan's empire, an empire forged in blood and held together by conquest. As a young prince under his elder cousin Batu Khan, Berke was raised among war horses, generals, and steppe thunder. He learned to read the wind before battle, to count heartbeats before killing, and he was sent, like many sons of nobility, into war. In the brutal campaigns of the 1230s and 1240s, Berke rode with Batu Khan during the Mongol invasion of Kievan Rus. Their armies burned cities like Ryazan and Vladimir to ash. The snow was soaked with blood, and silence followed the hooves of the Golden Horde. Alongside them was the legendary General Subutai, architect of Mongol victory in Eastern Europe. Together they pressed into Poland and Hungary. In 1241, they crushed European coalitions at the Battle of Mohi. Western knights, kings, and crusaders fell beneath Mongol arrows. Europe trembled, but it was spared only because of Berke Khan's sudden death, forcing the Mongol armies to retreat for succession. Berke witnessed all of it. He saw how victory was measured in fire and how glory was built atop corpses. He obeyed, he killed, he conquered. But in the silence that followed each campaign, something within him stirred. He began to question, not out loud, but deep inside. Is this all there is? Years passed. Berke became a seasoned commander, respected for his discipline and feared for his efficiency. When Hulagu Khan died in 1255, Berke assumed leadership of the Golden Horde. He launched campaigns against Galicia and Volhynia, crushed rebellion in the steppes, and oversaw raids into Lithuania, Poland, and even Byzantine Thrace. His armies were swift and terrifying, just as the empire had raised him to be. But something had changed. During a return from campaign around 1252, Berke encountered a caravan from Bukhara while traveling near the Caspian. Among the travelers was a Muslim scholar, an elder with a quiet voice but piercing words. He did not flatter the Khan. He did not beg for mercy. Instead, he spoke of a world beyond war, a world ruled by justice where the strength of a man was not in how many he conquered, but in how fairly he ruled. Berke was struck. He asked questions. More than once, more than one day. That scholar opened a door that Berke had not known was there. From that moment on, Berke began to seek knowledge from Muslim traders, poets, jurists, and imams. He listened, he studied, and slowly, through honest speech and quiet wisdom, the teachings of Islam entered his heart. He did not convert in a palace surrounded by fanfare. He took no counsel, held no court. One morning in solitude, he whispered the Shahada, La ilaha illallah, Muhammadur Rasulullah. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. The steppe wind still blew cold, but something in Berke was warm now, burning not with conquest, but with conviction. He became the first Mongol Khan to embrace Islam, and with that act, everything changed. He ordered the construction of mosques. He supported madrasas and the scholars. He fasted during Ramadan, and he began to see the Mongol Empire not as a destiny, but as a test he intended to pass. In the year 1258, the sky over Baghdad darkened, not with clouds, but with ash, arrows, and death. Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis, came not to conquer, but to erase. With over 100,000 Mongol warriors at his back, he surrounded the jewel of the Islamic world, Baghdad, the heart of the Abbasid Caliphate, the city of knowledge, light, and divine poetry, stood no chance. The Tigris was choked, canals were dammed, the caliph's forces drowned before they even saw battle. Then came the siege engines, massive, monstrous. Within days, the walls that had stood for centuries crumbled like sand. Caliph al-Mustasim surrendered. He emerged in peace, unarmed, with his nobles beside him, and the Mongols, cold, methodical, slaughtered every last one of them. What followed was not war, it was annihilation. For 7 days and nights, Baghdad burned. Mosques, libraries, hospitals, markets, all engulfed in flame. The House of Wisdom, mankind's greatest library, was thrown into the river. Ink from its sacred books mixed with blood until the Tigris ran black. Men were cut down in the streets. Women were dragged from their homes. Children were impaled, thrown into fire, trampled beneath hooves. Not even animals were spared, not even the dead. By the time the dust settled, over 800,000 souls had perished. The caliph himself, descendant of the prophet's uncle, was wrapped in a carpet and crushed beneath galloping horses, so that not a drop of royal blood would be spilled. And so, in a single week, 1,000 years of civilization vanished. Where once scholars debated divine law and the stars above, now lay smoke, bone, and silence. And when Berke Khan learned of Baghdad's destruction and the murder of the caliph, he spoke to his people. He has sacked all the cities of the Muslims and has brought about the death of the caliph. With the help of God, I will call him to account for so much innocent blood. It was not just rage, it was a vow. Sovereignty had shifted. Islam called him to action. After learning of the destruction of Baghdad and the killing of Caliph al-Mustasim, Berke Khan, leader of the Golden Horde, vowed to respond. He recognized that Hulagu's actions threatened not only Islam, but also the stability of the northern territories under his control. Berke first consolidated his power in the northern steppe and secured loyalty among his generals and tribal leaders. Instead of rushing into battle, he opted for strategy, cutting supply lines and attacking the rear of Hulagu's forces in the Caucasus. At the same time, he reached out to the Mamluk Sultanate in Egypt, led by Sultan Qutuz and later Baybars, proposing an alliance against Hulagu. Berke provided financial aid, cavalry units, and tactical guidance to the Mamluks, ensuring they were better prepared to face the Mongol threat in Syria. Hulagu, confident after conquering Baghdad, was forced to divert a significant portion of his army back to protect northern territories from Berke's attacks. This diversion weakened the Mongol forces in the Levant, creating the conditions for a decisive confrontation. On September 3, 1260, at the Battle of Ain Jalut, the Mamluks engaged the remaining Mongol army. Berke's strategic pressure had thinned Hulagu's ranks and disrupted his supply chains, giving the Mamluks a critical advantage. The Mamluks, with superior knowledge of the terrain and disciplined cavalry, defeated the Mongols in open battle, marking the first major Mongol defeat in history. Berke Khan was not personally present at the battle, but his actions directly contributed to the Mongol defeat and the halt of their westward expansion. Following Ain Jalut, Berke maintained communication and coordination with the Mamluks, reinforcing their northern borders and preventing Hulagu from regrouping effectively. This conflict also marked the first significant internal strife between Mongol rulers driven by religion rather than territorial conquest. Berke's campaigns ensured the survival of Muslim territories in the Middle East and set a precedent for future political and religious alliances in the region. Through careful strategy, calculated alliances, and decisive action, Berke Khan transformed from a regional Khan into a key defender of the Muslim world against the Mongol threat.